Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love? Talking about games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 5,411 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. We are past another milestone. Thank you all so much for watching last week's video about games that you might not want to pick up. Though, admittedly, a lot of those games are ones you absolutely should play. Forgive the clickbait title. This week, we are taking a look at the PS4 for the fourth time. And I always feel a little silly about doing these because prices for the PS4 right now are dirt cheap. I mean, looking at my collection right now, I think the most expensive game I have on the system, it's like $50, $60, which are those accurate? I don't know. But still, now is definitely the time to grab some of these. Yes, they might be $10. Yes, they may only go to $20. But hey, as someone who bought a bunch of games during the Xbox 360 hype last year, those $10 games can add up. So definitely, if these look interesting to you, you should check them out. Alright, let's check out the video. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Alright, the first game we're going to talk about is probably one of the more expensive ones. It was originally released by Limited Run Games, and I guess Limited Run Games really started ticking people off when they started doing limited releases, but then releasing more copies, or VGP did. I'll be honest with you guys, I could care less if I have a limited quantity of something. I never sell my games, I just want to have it. And the game we're talking about is the legendarily bad Night Trap. However, they did an update. So this was the 25th anniversary. It is a reversible cover. So if you open this up, you can see the other cover, which I think was it might have been the 32X, I'm not sure, but this is the way it looked like on the Sega CD when it came out. And I gotta tell you guys, this was a game that I bought, much like I bought Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, expecting it to be an absolute joke. But when Jen and I played this in the, I want to say Halloween of 2019, 2018, we did a Noob Gamer for it, so if you'd like to check it out, go take a look. There's like 4 of them. We had a great time. We had a great time playing it. And the big improvement they made with this is that in this game, you are playing as a security guard where you're monitoring all these different screens in real time and trying to knock out the vampires before they get the good guys in real time. Now, the part that makes the game tricky is that there is a code, a color code, that you have to be aligned with to activate the traps. And if you don't get to the right screen of the game where they say what the new code's gonna be, which is done much like they did in The Simpsons where they were saying the Atlanta Falcons and the Denver Broncos and the President Hillary, you know, that if you remember that episode, that was a very funny bit. That's how it is in this, but they're not covering their mouths, they're just saying it. It's like, change the code to blue, change the code to red. And if you don't get it on the right color, and it changes sometimes very quickly. If you don't get to the right color, then you lose some of the vampires, and then bad things happen. Now, it is surprisingly fun, but that update where it showed the little windows moving in real time did not occur back on the original Sega CD32X. That's one of the things they updated for the 25th anniversary. And it's just a cheesy B horror movie, which I can get behind as well. Sometimes you just want to watch the actual scenes instead of focusing on the game because it's funny. You know, them singing Night Trap, you really can't watch any of that if you expect to get anywhere in the game. And just the place in history this has where it's the reason for the ESRB, which even the alternate cover kind of gives a call out to because there is no ESRB rating on it. If you remember, there was a big thing in games where this and Mortal Kombat, and then famously Nintendo was saying Night Trap would never be on a Nintendo system. Then fast forward to the Switch, it is. It's funny how things change. But it's just a wonderful game and one that you should get for your collection no matter what system it's on. It's actually a lot of fun and a very good game to play with friends, as much as that doesn't sound like something that would be the case. So a strong one to start off on. All right, next game we're going to talk about here is one that I was genuinely surprised that I did like. It's funny, the sequel came out this year, and it seems like either something changed or people now have discovered it, because it's getting the complete opposite reaction as when the first one came out, even though allegedly it is the identical game, just a continuation of the story. And that game is Death Stranding. So I played this, I want to say, when COVID hit. They locked us down, and the first game I played was Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then I played Death Stranding. Those were the first two games I did back when we were doing the 2 weeks to stop the spread. And so it was a interesting game to be playing around that sort of world, but I really enjoyed it. Now, it is not a game that is going to give you a lot of gameplay. There is a lot of tedium in it, but if you're someone who's got a lot of tenacity and wants to get from A to B, wants to see something through, once you get invested into something or a route, it's hard not to go and do it. There was a lot here to enjoy, not to mention the graphics were very impressive, the acting was very impressive, the story was intriguing enough. You have people like Norman Reedus in it, as well as some of the other famous actors that are in it. I think Mads Mikkelsen, it was the bad guy in it, and it's just overall a very interesting game. It is something where it is, if you take any one section of it, it is not the strongest game, but if you put them all together, it is stronger than the sum of its parts. And it's funny, looking at Death Stranding 2, I feel like so many people have been saying, Game of the Year, this game is amazing, all the Sony fanboys, all the Kojima people. It's really just the same game from what I've seen, but hey, as I famously say, I've heard, or I don't know, or I think, guys, I've been playing games for 40 years. At a certain point, you get a knack for this sort of thing where you can see which way the wind is blowing, much like I can guarantee you Death Stranding 1 and Death Stranding 2 are the same game. But hey, at least people enjoy it now. If you look famously back at the channel, I covered it back in 2020, and while I was not saying the game was amazing, I was definitely saying, hey, this game is better than you've heard. And it's nice to see the zeitgeist kind of change on this game where it's fun. It's a fun game in not being fun at all. It's one of those things where it's not fun to pay your taxes, but when you've paid your taxes, it's very satisfying to be done. And that's kind of how this game is, which every once in a while, it's nice to play something like that if you like games. Like, I like a variety of games, and this is something that you're not going to find much of. Yes, it is like that standard Sony third-person story-based game, but there's not some underlying messaging. There's not some BS that's going to get you irritated or anything preaching to you. It's just a really unique story from a crazy person who just enjoys making these kind of things. So yeah, Death Stranding, one I'd still recommend picking up and checking it out. And if you like it, hey, check out the sequel, because the sequel is more of the same. All right, now here's one that I wanted to pick up because the original game came out on the PC initially. This one came out on the PC too, but I just never got around to, I tried to play it on a PC, but my PC wasn't strong enough, and I just was waiting for a console version of it, and then once they had a console version of the first one, then a sequel was coming, and so finally I got the sequel, and that game is Divinity Original Sin 2 Definitive Edition. Famously, I started playing this game in a co-op experience with my buddy Alexi. My buddy Sean actually gifted me the Switch version back during COVID, so we would play together. Didn't really do either of those, and then I started my own playthrough of this game, and I only got so far, which is part of the reason why I guess I haven't picked up, or I have picked up, but I haven't started playing Baldur's Gate 3 yet, because it is made by Larian, and I just don't know. I could not get behind this game. I enjoy Rails to a certain extent on these things. It's one of the reasons why I'm playing Final Fantasy Tactics, the Evil East Chronicles right now, and absolutely loving it, because it tells me where to go next, and I can't accidentally get myself in trouble. But with this kind of game, it really is, what do you want to do? What story do you want to make? What kind of thinking you're doing? And as someone that is not heavily involved in Dungeons and Dragons, that can be a little overwhelming, because I don't want to make the wrong choice. I don't want to regret something later. I don't want to have to remember a decision I made 10 hours later and then go back. And so that's kind of how these games play out. And if I had infinite time, maybe if I was playing this when I was still in college, it'd be a different case. But that game really was only ever been World of Warcraft for me. Other than that, I always get a limitation on these things, or I enjoy there being a limitation that I then press. But hey, this is a game that I still highly regard. The amount I did play it, I probably played it 20, 30 hours, which shows you how much you can do in it. I just couldn't get to the end of it. The storyline seemed interesting. They have preset characters, or you can make your own, and then you recruit the other preset characters. There's just a lot. There's a lot going on, and at the time, this is before I got glasses, and there's very, very little typeset in this game. It is much more designed to be playing on a computer monitor than on a big TV. So that was a problem for myself as well. And then the dialogue options just take so long. At a certain point, I start skipping through it, much like I did in Oblivion or in Mass Effect Andromeda or in the next game we're going to talk about, which by the way, great game, get it, definitely get it. But the next game we're going to talk about is Horizon Zero Dawn. Now, this was my PlayStation Game of the Year in 2017, though it still was probably my number 4 overall because the Switch had such a stellar first year. But Horizon Zero Dawn came out at a time where it was very interesting, very unique. It was not overdone with these third-person action games. You're using a bow and arrow. It has a very cool primitive world juxtaposed with a modern technology beast-like thing, which does not seem like they would coexist at all. But as the story goes on, they perfectly coexist. The mystery of where Aloy came from was very intriguing. Finding out how this planet became the way it did and what it was is a major highlight that unfortunately kind of everything that needed to be done was done in this first game. And then when they did the sequel, it could go nowhere. But this first game is still very, very good. Regardless of what happens to it in the sequel, I would highly recommend it. The controls are tight. The going through the game itself, the trees, the skill trees, it's nice. You can do stealth or you can do this. I mean, you might go into it thinking, oh, this is another run-of-the-mill open world action game. It's very similar to Days Gone, very similar to Ghost of Tsushima, but it is interesting enough. The story more than justifies the investment, and it is nowhere near as annoying as the sequel. Horizon Zero Dawn is still a very, very fun game, and one that I highly recommend checking it out. It's one of the best exclusives on the PS4. Alright, another game that I had never played back in the day, even though I used to go to the arcades all the time, though I was the stupid kid who would take his arcade money and go to the claw machine and get a bunch of stuffed gators, that some of which I still have because I was obsessed with these stupid stuffed gators they had, but I digress. But a game that I guess was big in the arcades that I did not know of until my buddy Ryan showed it to me back in like 2012, 2013, was an SNK game called Windjammers. And when I found out they did a physical release of it, I jumped on it immediately. And I have covered the sequel. They made a sequel recently, but this is the original game. It is just basically air hockey. Air hockey back and forth. There's 6 different characters you can play as. I always like playing as the German and going back and forth. And sometimes the arenas you can get more points by going on the top, sometimes in the middle, sometimes there's obstacles in the way, as well as you can charge up the disc and do specials, and it just all of this built into a very simple concept of basically Pong, but with an added layer of these trick shots, this and that, the different ways you can score. Makes for some high intense PvP action with a friend. Now, I don't know how much fun I'd have playing against the computer, but if you're looking for a game to play with someone who's not even a gamer, this is a great one because I played hours with this with several different people, including my buddy Sean. Really loved playing it and highly recommend checking it out, either this or the sequel, though I'm probably still particular to the first one, as the sequel just kind of seems a little unnecessary. After playing it, I think I preferred the way the first one felt. Alright, now here's a game that when they announced, it was in, I want to say 2012, 2013, before Lord of the Rings was ruined with Rings of Power and all that, and when they announced a sort of side story in Lord of the Rings, but using some of the knowledge from it that I had never heard of, it sounded interesting, and this game was called Lord of the Rings Shadows of Mordor. And this was I want to say one of the first games it got on the PS4. It released everywhere, and this had something called the Nemesis system, which unfortunately WB Games trademarked and then essentially killed, because there was supposed to be a Wonder Woman game coming out that used it, and they didn't use it. And the way the Nemesis system works is that you will have named characters in the world. So they develop this hierarchy. Think of it like a hierarchy of generals, like the game Stratego. If you know Stratego, you have scouts that are 9, bombers that are 8, the lieutenants that are 7, and so on and so forth, and it goes up and up and up the chain until you get to the one who's the general. The way this game works is that as you interact with the world, you will come across these named generals, and they have an assigned number 1 through 9. Now, if you defeat 8, then someone from 9 will come and take its place, and so on and so forth. So the higher you go into the hierarchy, you will then have this hierarchy of villains change. And sometimes when you defeat them, you may not kill them, they'll escape, they'll come back and they'll remember you, and they'll change their kind of move set. If you do kill them, sometimes they come back too, and they have like a neck brace on. Like I had that happen where I beheaded someone, they come back, they have a neck brace, and somehow they're alive again. Or they also can then attack the other generals. So they have the infighting from themselves too. And it's such a revolutionarily cool video game system that has only ever been used in 2 games, both of which were the Shadows of Mordor games. But the game itself is really fun. It reminds me of a mix of Assassin's Creed and the Batman Arkham games. So it moves like an Assassin's Creed game as far as the open world nature, even though Arkham City was that way. But the attacks, the combos, the fighting style uses combo presses, uses button combo presses to put enemies down, to link from one to the next. While yes, some of the later mid Assassin's Creed games behave that way too, it really felt like the fluidity of the Arkham games. Now, of the 2, Shadows of War is fun, but really, if you're going to go for one, Shadows of Mordor is the one to do. Now, I've found out since then that the whole thing with Celebrimbor, all the lore, all of that is very much against kind of what happened in the actual Tolkien Silmarillion. But at least it respects the lore and is a fun game and doesn't go around traipsing and ruining everything and, turning Galadriel into a warrior dude. But a very fun game, one I highly recommend, and it's dirt cheap. There's even a version of it on the 360, which I've always thought about picking up just to see how poorly it runs, but one that I cannot recommend enough. I absolutely adore this game. I like the sequel too. All right. Next game we're going to talk about is another PS4 exclusive. It is my favorite game from Software. I think I can say that. I don't know, Elden Ring might be better, but I think this one is the one that if I had to tell anyone one game to play of a From Software game before going to the others, this would be the one, and that is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. And what's so funny about this game is that when I first saw the preview, it was around the same time that Ghost of Tsushima was coming out, and I just looked at it like, oh, there's another samurai game? Okay. Well, I'm just going to wait for Ghost of Tsushima because that looks better. And then it went dark for a good year. Like, I want to say they announced it in 2017. And then in 2018, 2019, there was very little information about it. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice then had an early 2019 release. And then Ghost of Tsushima finally came around early 2019. They finally started talking about it again. I think it released December of 2019, maybe. But Sekiro is a very, very fun game, and it fixes the problem I have with a lot of FromSoft games, where it removes the stamina bar, and it also removes the amount of customization. So in Sekiro, it is very much linear in a way as far as what boss order you have to do and where you have to progress in the game, because just the nature of the time gating, the abilities you get certain things at certain times. But what that allows is it allows FromSoft to then design these boss encounters around a certain universal skill level or a universal skill set at the time. so that you don't have to worry about misbuilding your character, which is the issue I have with things like Bloodborne and Dark Souls and even Elden Ring to some extent, is that you can really go down the wrong path and ruin your playthrough to the point where it just makes sense either to grind it out for hours, which is not fun, leveling yourself up, using a weapon that allows you to kind of cheat the system, or starting over. Sekiro, you can't do that. You either need to get good or you need to stop. And it's one of those things where I got good at it, and I really enjoyed that process. The instead of a stamina bar, there's a break meter where you can be broken or you can break the enemy and then do massive damage. And I tell you, when I got through the final boss, which is a 4-stage fight, and I managed to get through the first 3 stages without getting hit, I was so dialed in and locked in to the parries, because you can parry pretty much everything. The window to parry it might be very small, but you can. And I absolutely adored this game, as well as it unlocked the joy of FromSoft games for me, because it gave me the ability to parry with a reliable system. It gave me the die twice element, so if you die, you can then revive yourself, so you can avoid those annoying, one shots or whatever. So it gives you that extra chance, and it gave you the ability to jump, which you could not jump in any of the other games. So those 3 things made me really fall in love with the series, and I think that, I know people will say this one, ironically, is the hardest FromSoft game. I might say yes, however, it is also the easiest to learn because you do not have 15 different choices. You have one choice. So you just have to get good at that one way of playing, and then you can translate that skill into the other games, which is one of the reasons why I enjoyed Elden Ring so much. All right, getting down to the last few here. So this one is kind of a give me, though no one really talks about it anymore, and unfortunately Naughty Dog has kind of just gone off the rails as far as the games they're making. I wish they they had a really nice trilogy of this on the PS3, and they released 2 on the PS4, but the first one's one we're going to talk about, and that is Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. And I played through this game. I really enjoyed it. When I first got a PS3, I played all of the 3 Uncharted's back to back to back, and I had a great time doing it. Uncharted 4 was the first time where I got the game kind of around the release window of when it came out. And the story was interesting. It was nice meeting Nathan's brother. My biggest holdup with it was just Naomi. I did not care for the character of Naomi constantly kicking you and your brother's asses throughout the entire game, and then the resolve with her character, which kind of spoilers, kind of not, because if you've seen The Lost Legacy, Naomi pairs up with Chloe. Basically, it's just she's a villain, but not really a villain. Instead, it's really the other person. But she never gets her comeuppance, which, as kind of like in a Bond movie, the way these games in an Indiana Jones movie, you always want to see the antagonist get their comeuppance, regardless of the circumstance. And Naomi gets none. The most she gets is like a slap from the boss guy, and that's supposed to make me then sympathize with her. Which it didn't. And you get into these unwinnable fights with her that just kind of kill it a little bit, because it's just like, what's the point? Like, how is there a fail condition in this fight if I'm always going to lose this fight? So then these button prompts I'm doing, these cutscenes I'm doing, these quick time events I'm doing, if I fail just one of them, it should just go to the end of the fight. Because it's just, that's what I mean, like, what's the point? Or give me an option other than me just always getting my ass kicked with my brother at times. But other than that, plays just like the first 3. Yes, Nathan's getting a little older, but they still have this cool adventure, much like these are Indiana Jones games. That's what they're kind of being. At the end of it, you find out Nathan had a daughter. He's retiring. It's kind of why they haven't gone back to it. But hey, you know what? It might be time, after who knows what they're doing with Heretic Prophecy. But maybe it's time to bring old man Nathan back for another spin, because I kind of miss this fun level of Naughty Dog games. And now they've just gotten so heavy with The Last of Us and whatever this new game is. But hey, Uncharted 4 is still a fun way to have a Thief's End. All right, and then the last 2 here, let's go with this one. So this was a game that was a sequel to one of my favorite unexpected games during the 360 era, and it originally only came out on PC. and I pre-ordered it. I remember going to GameStop and pre-ordering the PC version, and the person just looking, this was like in 2016, 2017. And them looking at me like, wow, I didn't even know we could pre-order a PC game. But I did, because I'm a physical collector. And then when they originally had the DLC for it, I wanted to play the DLC on the PS4. So I picked up XCOM 2, and then the War Within, I think, or the War Unknown, whatever the, what is the... Not War Within, whatever the DLC is called for him. God, I can't remember. But basically, it changes the whole complexity of the game with the DLC, where you get these 3 super units that then stalk you throughout the game. Each one of them has their own kill conditions, and like one's like a stealth one, one's more of a brawler, as well as in order to combat these, you get these 2 additional types of units you can use, one being sort of a stealth, etc., etc. But War of the Chosen, that's what it's called. So the War of the Chosen DLC, I thoroughly enjoyed. XCOM 2, when I played this in 2018 for the second time, it was one of the better performing videos I'd done on the channel, which I'm not quite sure why that was, but I went through and played it. Plays phenomenally well on the PS4. Can't recommend it enough. I don't know if there's a version of this that comes with the DLC on the disc, but I had a great time playing it. Would highly recommend it. If you like XCOM Enemy Unknown on the 360, XCOM 2, by all accounts, is better in every regard, except one. It's a little too time-gated. So it feels like you're getting pushed a little too long, which I know the point of these games is to always be teetering by a thread from failure. But because I know how to keep myself from failing in these games without having to restart from the beginning, it generally means that I'm just having to play in a style that is not very much fun. And that's kind of my holdup, is that in XCOM Enemy Unknown, I could get away with a little bit more side questing, a little bit more playing with characters that may not be part of the regular squad, versus XCOM 2, I had to play a lot more deliberately. And I had some wonderful stories, don't get me wrong. There was one battle in this one, which it always seems to happen, the ones where you have to use the uplink. It unleashes this unknown enemy for the first time. And at the time, I was working at Acura, so all of my units were named after my coworkers, and the entire squad got wiped out except for my buddy Pablo. And I remember it was like Pablo's last stand. It was him versus 3 units. I still to this day don't know how he survived and took them all out. But I remember telling him the next day at work and be like, bro, you stood up tall, you did it. And he was like, oh wow, that's all. Like, he was actually genuinely happy to hear about it, which was funny. Usually when that kind of stuff happens, people look at me like, what do you mean you named a character after me? But he was all for it, so that was cool. So yeah, XCOM 2, Enemy Unknown, and you got great stories in it. And the last game we're going to talk about is one of the ones that first started the whole remaster nature of a lot of the old Super Nintendo games, and then adding a little bit of new stuff to it, and that was Wild Guns Reloaded. So Wild Guns famously was one of the more expensive games on the Super Nintendo you could get. It is a behind-the-back, over-the-shoulder shooter game where you play as either a cowboy or a cowgirl, and you're just going back and forth, almost like a shooting gallery, trying to take out, I think it was like 3 or 4 levels. Well, with this one, they more or less just remade the game, but they added 2 additional characters you could play as, and I want to say it's 4-player co-op, possibly, and it's just very cool. I mean, I think it was only like $20 when it came out. It's a Natsume game, or Natsume, which is the people who made Harvest Moon. And it's not a limited run release, which is cool when this happens, is that, hey, you know what, these bigger developers could make, or bigger publishers could put out physical games. And still, not my favorite game, not my favorite genre, but a far more cost-effective way of playing this game than getting the Super Nintendo version. And I'm glad to see this trend's continued, because they've had games like the Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, the Ninja Warrior Saviors whatever. It's like all these games that are coming back. There are these expensive Super Nintendo games that are fun, kind of like beat-em-up brawlers or single-screen shooters, that kind of thing. And this is another one. Definitely recommend it. I want to say when it came out, it had some keychains or something that came out. I don't know. But yes, that is one to grab. And that is it. That is another 10 games you should grab for your PS4 before the prices go up. And thank you guys again. The video last week did wonderful. Even though you know, we go up and down sometimes with the topics. You're still coming back, still getting new people criticizing me about how I never play anything. And I just love all of you guys. So thank you. You know, please be kind. You know, you don't have to be, you don't have to be dumbed down or anything like that, but you don't have to be cruel to each other. You can be cruel to me if you want. I don't mind. I'm an old, I'm a man. I'm almost 40. So yeah. But hey, as a reminder, I release a new video every week. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.